The year is 1917. The world is in the throes of the First World War. Britain, seeking support against the Central Powers, makes a historic promise. In the midst of the global conflict, Britain makes a move that would reverberate through history. The Balfour Declaration. Named after British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour, this document expressed Britain's support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. But why would Britain make such a promise during a time of war? The reasons were twofold. First, Britain was looking for strategic allies. The Ottoman Empire, which was aligned with the Central Powers, had control over Palestine. Supporting a Jewish homeland in Palestine could potentially destabilize the Ottoman Empire and tip the scales of the war in Britain's favor. The second reason was the influence of Zionist lobbying in Britain. Zionism, the movement advocating for the return of the Jewish people to their ancestral homeland, had gained significant traction. Prominent British Jews such as Chaim Weizmann, who later became the first president of Israel, played a crucial role in lobbying the British government to support a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The impact of the Balfour Declaration was immediate and profound. It led to an increase in Jewish immigration to Palestine, sparking tensions with the Arab population, who viewed this as a threat to their own national aspirations. This escalation in tensions laid the groundwork for the decades of conflict that would follow. Indeed, the Balfour Declaration was more than just a letter. It was a strategic move, a promise made in the heat of war that would have far-reaching implications. This declaration not only signaled Britain's support for a Jewish homeland, but also marked the beginning of a tumultuous period in the history of Palestine. The Balfour Declaration set the stage for a complex and contentious period in the history of Palestine. Fast forward to 1920, the Ottoman Empire has fallen, and Britain now holds the mandate for Palestine. This mandate, entrusted by the League of Nations, was not merely a territorial claim. It was a responsibility that Britain bore to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. As outlined in the Balfour Declaration, under the British rule, Palestine underwent significant changes, particularly in terms of its demographic composition. Jewish immigration increased, motivated by the promise of a homeland and the harrowing circumstances they faced in Europe, particularly during the rise of Nazi Germany. By the mid-1930s, the Jewish population of Palestine had swelled to nearly a third of the total population. With this demographic shift came a surge in Jewish-Arab tensions. The influx of Jewish immigrants led to a significant change in the economic, social, and political landscape of Palestine, and the native Arab population perceived this as a threat to their own homeland. The British authorities found themselves in a precarious position, trying to balance the interests of both communities. This balancing act was not always successful. In 1929, a dispute over Jewish access to the Western Wall in Jerusalem triggered a series of violent riots across Palestine, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of Arabs and Jews. Then, between 1936 and 1939, Palestine witnessed a major Arab revolt, fueled by growing Arab nationalism and opposition to Jewish immigration. The British responded with a heavy hand, imposing martial law and crushing the revolt. But the tensions remained, simmering beneath the surface. The British Mandate, an attempt to implement the Balfour Declaration, was a period of turbulence and change. The promise of a Jewish homeland had been made, but at the cost of peace in the region. The British were caught in the middle, attempting to mediate between the Jewish and Arab communities, but their efforts only served to intensify the conflicts. The British Mandate, intended to implement the Balfour Declaration, only served to intensify the conflicts in Palestine. By 1947, post-World War II Britain, beleaguered and bankrupt, decides to hand over the Palestine problem to the United Nations. In the aftermath of the cataclysmic global conflict, Britain was left tattered and torn. Its coffers were empty, its people weary, and its global standing diminished. The question of Palestine, a thorny issue that had been a constant source of tension and conflict, was no longer a burden Britain could bear. So the task was passed to the United Nations, a fledgling organization that was barely 2 years old. The UN was given the monumental task of resolving the Palestine issue, a challenge that was met with the decision to partition the region into Jewish and Arab states. It was a solution that aimed to satisfy both parties, but it was met with widespread opposition. The Jewish community, while accepting the plan, was disappointed by the size and geographic discontinuity of their proposed state. The Arab nations, on the other hand, rejected the plan outright. They were of the belief that the partition plan was unfair, that it favored the Jewish community, and that it violated the rights of the majority Arab population in Palestine. As the opposition grew, so too did the violence. Tensions that had been simmering below the surface began to boil over. The region was engulfed in a series of violent confrontations and civil unrest, a situation that only served to expedite Britain's decision to wash its hands of the Palestine problem. And then, in 1948, Britain decided to end the mandate. It was a decision that was met with a mixture of relief and trepidation. On one hand, it was seen as Britain finally relinquishing a responsibility that it had struggled to fulfill. On the other, it was viewed as the opening of Pandora's box, a move that would plunge the region into further chaos. Britain's departure from Palestine marked the end of a tumultuous 30-year period and the beginning of a new chapter in the region's history. The end of the mandate didn't signify the end of the conflict, but rather it was the start of a new, complicated and enduring chapter in the annals of Middle Eastern history. Britain's time in Palestine from 1917 to 1948 was a period of great change and conflict. The Balfour Declaration, a seminal moment in this saga, promised a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, sparking a surge of Jewish immigration and ultimately strife with the Arab population. The British mandate that followed was a tightrope walk of diplomacy and governance, as Britain attempted to balance the aspirations of both Jewish and Arab communities. This challenging period was marked by rising tensions, civil unrest and fraught negotiations. The controversial end of the mandate, leading to the establishment of the State of Israel, was a culmination of these escalating conflicts. Britain's withdrawal was met with a mix of relief, resentment, and uncertainty. This complex chapter in history continues to influence the geopolitics of the Middle East to this day. The legacy of Britain's time in Palestine serves as a reminder of the intricate and often volatile interplay between politics, identity, and territory. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos.